to see you all here today. Welcome to today's Risk and Assurance Committee meeting. We have now started our live stream. I'd like to welcome everyone here today with a karakia. Tūtau mai I runga, tūtau mai I raro, tūtau mai I waho, tūtau mai I roto. Kia tau ao te mori tū, mori ora ki te katoa. Pumie, puie, tāpie. Okay, on our apologies list today, we do have two, which is Jeremy and Lyndall.
Happy to move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Morris. Seconded by Alistair. In favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Just to note that we have online with us John as well.
Do we have him? Oh, yeah, there he is.
We do indeed. Declarations of interest, just to remind everybody, as per usual, if there's anything on today's agenda that you need to remove yourself on, that is absolutely fine. If you have a conflict, you can just let us know at the time. Public forum and petitions, I have none registered for today. Confirmation of the minutes. If people have had a look or would like to have a look now at our minutes from our last committee meeting.
There was a couple of questions in the minutes where I wondered whether they had been attended to. I couldn't see them in the report. 9.2. These are questions that you asked. I don't know if you were going to bring them up. Maybe you were anyway. But and then 9.7. And the staff would provide some more information. I don't know if that's been received yet, is it?
I'm just going to have a look at 9.2 and 9.7 right now. So,
through you, Chair, I can provide an update of 9.2 when we get to the risk report meeting. In 9.7, we don't have a government-funded project report this time, but I've got an update on what's happening in that space, so we can bring that information through to the committee next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Tell me why we bring it through next meeting. This seems to be happening at every meeting we have.
so this is for Alistair referring to 9.7 in terms of just,
yeah.
Yep. So I know that that was a standing agenda item paper.
Yeah.
And that.
Yep. So what happened with that is that we had a change of executive director over the projects, and because it took time, so we closed off one set of projects, which was the government funded projects, the COVID stimulus projects, and at that time we had our existing executive director step back from that as we've looked at what we want the governance group to review. It's all of our government funded projects, not just the ones that we started the governance over. So as we've been reshaping that program of work that we want the governance group to look at, we've been out looking for a new executive director. That's all just happening, so that's why we've not been able to provide that report to this committee. It's just the timing of the staffing and getting the reporting. In terms of reference for that governance group committee, all aligned.
It's a very fair question, Alistair, because it has been a standing paper for our committee. So absolutely fair. We should expect it.
Mr. Chairman, can I also comment on one other more general thing? Just reading through the minutes here, they're very brief. And if I was a member of the public reading them, I wouldn't be able to get much information from them. I know that some of their other meeting minutes have been more expensive than this, but these are basically just saying that we discuss something and then we agree to it. So it's not very much like, I think, from a public information point of view. I know the information provided in the agenda, but what we actually discussed is probably important too.
Yes, I will let maybe answer. I certainly know from my history, and I'm sure yours as well, Morris, of meeting minutes. It is one of those things that does change over time in terms of that discussion around what should be recorded from from discussion through to action. I will let Amy
Yeah,
also.
so through you, Chair, I can't tell you the exact date, but a while back we made the move to resolution only minutes. There was a number of reasons for that, primarily in terms of the desire to keep councillors safe and to make sure that we're recording who says what evenly, not providing a whole transcript. There's efficiency matters there in terms of making sure that we are not spending excessive amounts of time writing up meeting notes. Since COVID, we have been live streaming, and in fact, there is a record on in cyberspace in perpetuity actually of the meeting, so people can go and observe the actual items should they wish, and also the full information is contained in the agendas as you point out. So there are a number of reasons why we did that, but that is why we have a summary here instead.
Mr. Chairman, I think that that's fair enough. You don't want to record what people say, but you do. I think they could be a bit. I know you can see them online, but if you have to sit through a 2-hour meeting to catch something of interest, that's not something that everybody's going to do. Whereas if you have a written record that's a bit more expansive, people can scan through it and see something that they might be interested in more quickly. I know it's a bit of a dilemma. I don't really want staff to be spending hours and hours writing up, 20 or 30 pages of the minutes. That's not going to be very accessible either or transparent. So, but I just wondered whether there might be some sort of middle ground where, for example, 9.3, the health and safety report says discussions focused on the range of risks staff are involved in, which are reflected in the hazard register. I wondered whether those risks, for example, could be recorded.
Yeah, I certainly hear where you're coming from, Morris, in terms of getting that balance right. Yeah, I know that certainly the committee have got a lot of standing papers which are public, and so sort of capturing that key piece of information. But you're right, it is sort of a discussion point that comes up in terms of for all committees in terms of what those minutes should contain. Obviously, there was a discussion and some agreement a while back on that. So, but absolutely fair to raise it.
So we're going to change it all.
Some
other minutes are actually, a bit more expensive.
Chair, just the comment was made, is there any middle ground that can be found? And it may not be for this committee alone to consider this, but a simple solution may be simply to add to the minutes a timestamp of where someone would go to in a recorded version if they wanted to pay attention to a particular agenda item. So if it was agenda item 9.4 and it commenced at 25 minutes into the meeting, they could fast forward to that 25 minutes and listen to the fruitful discussion around that particular item. Now, I don't think that's something that we necessarily want to agree at this council. A committee meeting, I think it would be something that you'd want to propose or consider the utility or the cost of doing that.
That's fair. Yeah. Nicole.
Yes, actually, Phil just about said everything I was going to say. Was I think for efficiency to have a link so people could go and see the full minutes is probably the most efficient way of doing it. We know that if you have very full minutes, one instance, that line was wrong. It's about efficiency, but also about transparency. And I think if we can find an efficient way that a member of the public can say, "Oh, I want to know more about that," the links there, they can go to it, is probably the best way forward. Have we had a mover for?
No, not yet.
Austin, you can add.
I think this is part of where we're having difficulty. In other words, that we're not taking our people with us, our ratepayers with us. And Morris was right, that if you come in here and read this, then they're not going to pick it up. And are they going to go to the and look at a link? Maybe they will. But we've got to, in the future going forward, some of us might not be here, but the thing is that we've got to bring the ratepayers or our constituents with us. So we've got to make it easy for them because there's a void there at the moment.
Through you, Chair, as part of the organisation redesign process, we were able to build a democracy services team. It's the first time that we've had a team that's specifically focused on council matters and servicing the needs of both the committees and your fine selves as councillors. So one of the things that we envisage that enabling is standardisation of what happens across the committee. So, you know, we're happy to work with you on this and strike the right balance of standardisation, making sure that we're providing information that's relevant to your fine selves, but also to our public as well. And we only just this month finalised that. In fact, actually, Deborah started this week, just completed that team. So we've got Paula and Deborah in that team, who are both new to their roles and will be, you know, will be a work on. We've got a massive opportunity as well with the Traineum and the council elections for a reset as well, and building our protocols and practices moving forwards into the year. So we can, you know, we've got some democracy workshops scheduled with you as we move into that time to think about lessons learned, things that might be useful for the new council that we'll pick your brains on and look to shape up as we go forwards.
Certainly that consistency across all the committees
Yep.
is the key, in having that a point in time where the decision is made around all the protocols, such as the minutes. Mover, please.
Happy to move.
Second, Morris, in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Notifications of extraordinary urgent business. There has been none. Questions? None have been provided to me. Chair's report. And councillors as well. So councillors certainly after myself. So certainly this time of year, I certainly, I guess, as part of that, coming to the end of the three-year training as well. So time to reflect over the committee in terms of what our terms of reference is and what we've been covering. And so when I was looking at today's papers, I certainly took that time to stand back. A couple of the good highlights, which I was pleased that we made progress on, is certainly around that risk and internal audit. In fact, the internal audit function itself, we're starting to see come through in our papers. The reason I highlight that is because that is actually a tool which has been widely used throughout the country in terms of both local government and central government. And I think we're starting to see some real benefits come out through that. And if you sort of look further north, you'll see that they have real benefits as well in terms of what those reviews look at in terms of internal control environment in an organisation. So just sort of wanted to highlight that as a particular sort of a good takeaway in terms of a reflection on ourselves at the moment. Does anyone else have anything they would like to contribute for the council?
Just briefly, I attended the Murahaki Region breakfast yesterday, and it was very much focused on AI, and so that's certainly going to change the way we all work. And some jobs will go, but others will be created, and it's just quite amazing how quickly that is actually moving, and it will be an assistance to us because that information can be very quickly brought up. Consents you could be using AI to make sure you've got consistency running through the thing. So it's certainly a space that's moving very quickly, and we just need to have safeguards in place that it's not, you don't get abused, but I think there's more positives than negatives. So that was quite interesting, and even the level of automation and the Richardson Group sawmilling, where all this technology, and it's you've got somebody sitting there that can run the saws, run a whole lot of stuff. A lot of manual jobs that were quite boring or dangerous are going to go, but it opens up the opportunity for new jobs. And they're actually also looking at the education system, trying to encourage young people to perhaps consider jobs they wouldn't have in the past. So interesting breakfast.
Yeah. I think when you see the practical applications of the AI come through, that's when we sort of starting to see to see those benefits, without a doubt. Anyone else have anything they would like to report on? So we're going to move to our first agenda item, 9.1 is our risk management report. Amy.
Thank you, Chair. So I will take the report as read, but just to note that there've been discussions around this committee table about us having a risk scan. Ideally, we would do that at the start of the LTP, and in fact, we will with the new council. But we're taking the opportunity to work with PwC. Normally, we would come back to the committee at this time and report on a risk scan, what's happening out there in the big wide world, things that we need to be thinking about relative to our top risks. So we are, in the absence of actually having anybody internally in the risk space at the moment, we're working with our internal audit provider who also provide risk services to support us doing that risk scan. So executive are in the middle of doing that work with PwC at the moment. We've got a workshop on Monday to review our top risks, and we will bring that conversation back to council. So just making sure that we are, I guess, attuned to the current operating environment, which I think is, and certainly the external environment, which I think has changed considerably in the last 3 years since we did our first lot of risk scanning. And then in order to answer Morris's question from earlier about the auditing our risks and auditing against our risks, one of the things that we will do off the back of that review of our top risks is to make sure that our internal audit program is going to be aligned to those risks. So we're focusing our efforts and our energies on those things that have the most risk of derailing us from achieving our organisational objectives. So that's a work in progress, but it's very much in progress. Monday's our next session with PricewaterhouseCoopers and the executive, and we'll come back to council after that session.
I had a particular question. I know in this paper, something we've been tracking for a while was around our risk management framework and risk management policy, and sort of embedding that within the organisation. So I wanted to sort of make sure that we at least touched on it today, just to sort of hear about and remind ourselves where it's at and where we want to take it. And just
sure. So we've got a document in review for I guess that explains how we might do risk as an organisation. I'm keen to make sure that we've got some tangible, practical operationalisation of that, and whilst we're recruiting, being able to use external providers tactically to provide that support to make meaningful impacts in terms of the recruitment that I'm out doing at the moment, and how we might shift the focus of risk within the organisation. I think there's a couple of key areas that I think will help us actively embed risk management, and that is thinking about how we get managers and the people in the organisation to think about risk, and how we report on risk up through the executive into this committee, making sure that we're not over-reporting, but we're focusing on the right things, on our critical risks, and making sure that we've got oversight of those, because that internal reporting environment doesn't exist universally across the organisation at the moment. We've got pockets of it, but it's not through all teams yet, and that we're actually focusing on controls, making sure that we're attuned to the risks. So we're not there yet, but that is the anticipated program of work going forwards.
Alistair.
I put a question to the CE around about 2 months ago, and I asked, did the change in the staff and whatever's gone on, has that affected our output? And she said no. So I put 5 questions in written form. Strange for me, but I did it. I've got an answer to one of them, and that answer was that we haven't done it. The other 4 of them, I haven't even got an answer to. So if we got a risk there that things aren't working,
I can't answer that. I would have to go back and follow up your questions and work out where they're at.
So I think,
but hang on, can I just add supplementary to that?
Yep.
I'm getting the same feedback from outside that things aren't functional. That's why I become quite intense, I guess, to find out, are we getting it settled?
so the paper is on risk.
That's
and,
correct.
And then I liked that you did round it back to that. So you've got a specific question around a certain scenario,
Yes.
but then you've raised that there is a risk. This one here is around a risk management framework, but I'm absolutely happy to for the question to be answered in the frame of this particular context of the paper, which is how we're managing certain risks within the organisation.
Yep.
And in terms of our management, without answering that particular scenario.
Yeah,
Please
so-
answer my
so-
question.
Yeah.
So,
I pose that as a risk to the operation.
sorry, can
What
you
are we-
restate?
where are we
Sorry, I need the question restated, and I'm not sure what question I'm answering.
My question I'm putting is that has the internal changes, they've affected our performance over a given period of time. When will that get embedded and settled down?
So we're actively working on that right at the current period of time. We've got our executive in place, and they are out recruiting for the roles that we need in order to deliver our work program. We're prioritising the roles that we are out recruiting, because actually when you are recruiting, that takes time, effort and energy as well. But that is a significant focus of the general managers at the moment.
How many are we recruiting? How
I
many
don't
positions?
have those numbers to the top of my head at the
I
moment.
don't, that's right.
Anything else done? Nicole?
I'll probably take John's been waiting patiently. I do have a question.
Thank you. Yeah. I don't have that screen up, so that's why I will be missing John. So, John, are you with us? You'd like to ask a question?
Just go on.
Sorry, John, we have missed you, but you can come back. Nicole, if you'd like to go first, and then we'll come back to John.
Oh, you there, John?
Yeah, sorry, I don't know what's going on. The Zoom just keeps kicking me out. I've rejoined about 6 times. I'll be quick. Yes, supporting Alice's question around the restructure, what risk is that for our organisation as a restructure? I think what Alice is trying to ask. Second question I have around what other should we be looking at for risk strategy? For me, one is around our
Dropped out.
Yeah,
I don't like your question, John.
you've been, yes, it's unfortunate. Yeah, and I am mindful of the questions being on target. I can see that there's obviously questions about certain things that are happening operationally and strategically, which is fair. Would have been good to have got the questions before the meeting.
Yeah.
When the questions can be posed. So I sort of do want to try and keep things to the paper. The paper is around our risk management framework, and we have a certain way that's designed. So it's certainly fair to ask, how do you raise these questions up? You know, and we should have a process for raising these questions so they can be discussed in
Yes.
public.
He's there now, I think.
So I
Yes.
sort of want to keep it within the framework of this paper. And if you do have outside questions, they do need to be raised before the actual committee as part of the agenda. So, John.
Yeah. So I guess my question is, are we broad enough with our risk profile looking beyond what is happening internally in the building? Do we need to have a broader scope around our responsibilities with the community is probably more.
Certainly understood that, John, and I will let Amy respond to that.
Thanks for your question, John. Yes, certainly that is exactly what when you have a look at our existing schedule of critical risks, you'll see that they reflect those outside of the building, and certainly the work that we're doing with PricewaterhouseCoopers at the moment in terms of the risk scan looks at what's going on globally, nationally and locally, and thinking about how that impacts on us as an organisation. That, you know, as I've just said before, that's current work, and that's what we'll be bringing back to you for a discussion on post their workshop on Monday.
And then Nicole.
Yes, I guess following on from Alice's comments, I think it's having sort of red flags when there's an email on the system that they do get answered. And I know there's one or two I'm going to follow up with staff that people have emailed me, but we haven't had, there is quite a lag at the moment. And I know we've just been through a restructure, we've just been through a very busy time with the annual plan, but there's some of those things I think we need in the system that they do keep popping up that were replies answered, and I'm sure we'll look to technology to do that.
Thank you. Morris, a question on this paper?
Yes, if I may, I might like to ask a question about protocol regarding questions. We talked about Alice's question. He said that he had sent an email to the CE asking 5 different questions. Now, in my view, that the way to do that is to ask a question either through this committee, if it was relevant for this committee, by posing a question, or through the council. Would you care to comment on that? And is that the proper way of dealing with that, and therefore the frustrations that any councillor might have could be overcome?
Sure. So certainly in my experience with councils, there should be a protocol in place for councillors to ask questions, and there'll be a number of channels that can go through. I will actually ask Amy what the current protocols are for this council in terms of where councillors' questions can come through the different channels.
And I do believe we have had questions that have been formally presented to council most recently, actually, and we've been able to have staff go away and prepare an answer so that there is a ability to have a conversation about that in real time around the table. That's helpful, I know, for yourselves. In fact, we had a discussion about that, and it's certainly helpful for staff so we can have the time that we need to go and be able to inform the questions that's being asked, because sometimes we need to speak to other members of staff or, you know, refer to documentation, etc., etc. So that is certainly welcome. And there are a number of ways that you can do that. You either email through to the chair, or you can email through a question to Jan, and we can make sure that that's directed to the relevant committee. And certainly if you could put that commentary in your question that you'd like it directed to a particular committee, that would be helpful. We try and get the papers out to you a week in advance. So if upon reading those papers they spark questions, you're certainly able to either email the chair and say you have a question. Appreciate that. A week doesn't, you know, by the time you've read your papers, you know, it might not be a week. We might not be able to get back to you in time, but I think that's certainly helpful all round, and I would encourage you to do that. Also, back to your point from before, Alistair, it's helpful for those people in the public that are watching, so, you know, they can get the answer to the question as well.
Okay.
Thank you. I have one other more general question, and that was currently the government is undertaking a review of the WorkSafe legislation. Is that likely to affect the way we deal with risk in this organisation?
Can we hold that question till we get to the health and safety report, and then I will get Paul to talk about what he knows about that. As I understand it, the detail around that, those changes to that legislation is not well articulated at the current time. I think the short answer is probably yes, but we'll see if Paul can elaborate further when we get to the health and safety section. Would that be all right?
Thank you. Yes.
So, check any last questions on this paper? Phil, yes?
Two
Last
specific
question?
questions.
Yep.
When is it expected that a new risk and governance manager will be appointed?
I am working with an agency at the moment. I have literally this week just had some CVs come through that I need to review, so we're long listing.
By the end of the year, do you think?
Oh, Are you talking financial or calendar?
Calendar.
Yes, I would be eternally hope so that that would be the case.
Thank you. And the second one was realistically, when would be the next opportunity to reschedule a business continuity training exercise? The one that's been deferred and reported on.
I can't answer that right now. I don't know. I have not tuned my mind to that. Really. I will take a note of your question and I will come back to you.
Yes. That is fair. That business continuity, we do want to make sure that is continuing to progress. There are a number of things in that in this space that we need to keep an eye on.
Yep.
All right, can I have a mover, please? Morris, thank you. Seconded, Phil, in favour?
Aye.
Against? Passed. Thank you. 9.2. So off the back of our risk management framework, we have internal audit, which has been touched on a couple of times already, but Amy, if you could provide us an update.
Yeah, sure. So last time the committee met, we were about to embark on our cybersecurity audit, which was the third audit that we've got in our scheduled list of audits. That has now been completed and we're just finalising our management response prior to getting that go through the executive and then bring back to this committee next meeting. We also have, as per our discussion last time, got a summary of audit actions which we've tabled as an attachment to this paper, which shows all of the actions from the previous 2 audits that we have completed and our progress against those.
I will start with a question. So this is fantastic to see the internal audit program up and running, and now we're getting reports with recommendations. For those who've seen that table, there's now sort of a long list of actions of areas that we need to implement. So just keen to understand your balance between continuing on with more and more internal audits with more and more actions.
Yep.
And balance of actually getting some of these done, which I know just from experience at other councils, the list can go rather long, rather quickly. So just
Yep.
in terms of your thoughts around how to manage that workload.
Yeah, so sure. So firstly, the way in which we ordered the program of audit was to focus on those areas where we felt we had most need, which proved to be true. So we have a long list of actions. We are hopeful that that subsequent audits won't show quite so much improvement that's required, and certainly initial indications from our cybersecurity audit is supportive of that. The other thing though is you're absolutely right, when there's lots to do to get up to good practice and best practice, it can make quite a burdensome program of work. So we've had a conversation with the internal auditor we originally had set ourselves a goal of running 3 audits a year. We've pulled that back to 2 to be able to manage workloads within the current staff complement, and I would say that's not related to the organisational restructure, just in case that was a question from anybody. And then the third thing, as I alluded to in the risk report, we currently, as part of the risk scan and the review of our strategic risks, we will also be having a review of our internal audit program. So, now that we've been going for 18 months, it's a good opportunity to just review how that's going and whether there's a different or better way or a different focus that we need on our internal audit program. But the actions from the pieces of work we've already done, the audits that we've already done are extant and are continuing pieces of work, as you will see there.
Yep. And importantly, it's got beside those actions, a person responsible for them. So that's sort of a key bit that I look at. Anyone else have any questions on the internal audit program that we have here?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I see the procurement officer appointment is it's imminent. That'd be good. That's something we've been waiting for a little while to ensure that procurement policies are done as well as they can be. I assume that's the role there. So I guess
Which point are you talking to?
I'm looking on the table.
Yep.
Internal audit action.
Page 18, yep.
First line there, and then a couple of next one as well. And down to the bottom, that first one about the the last line on that page.
Yep, yep. So
I
note
guess-
that it's recruitment imminent, not appointment imminent.
Oh, okay, so there's still a bit of a delay there.
So it's just a process that takes time finding the right people, but we are, as you might see from our website, actively recruiting for a number of roles.
Right, thank you. Mr. Chairman, another question was about the fleet, bottom of page 20. Says have contributed to a review of the motor vehicle policy and proposed an updated replacement process for vehicles. And I wonder, does this include looking at electric vehicles for the council?
Our policy already says that we look for energy efficient vehicles across the range of vehicles. So, including hybrids and petrol and, Patrick could come and talk to that, and it, depending on the use, so we try and do horses for courses, but it's one of the factors we consider.
Patrick?
Yes, we in the fleet replacement work we will undertake. I'm very keen personally to look at more use of hybrid electric vehicles. So, for example, there's a new product in the market, the Shark 6 utility vehicle. We have a lot of utility vehicles, the Muscle Rangers and Mazda BT50s. The Shark 6 is a petrol generator electric vehicle. It plugs in, it gives, if it's plugged in, you can get 100 k's of electric only range. If you extend it beyond that, you can get probably 2/3 better fuel economy than the equivalent fuel with Mazda. So very keen to look at whether we can put that into the mix and start to bring our fleet. So that will be a focus when we start looking at our fleet.
All right, thank you.
Bill, perhaps just a really broad observation is that when you take that particular report, as in a complete thing, it's probably a little less assuring than what you'd ideally want. But I probably also reflect that staff are aware of that and are carrying a degree of anxiety, knowing that perhaps there is an elevated risk being carried as we work through the response to some of those things. So I guess my question is, and I understand that we may be running out of surplus as we approach the end of this financial year, is there an ability to outsource or to seek additional support with progressing some of those things in the short term, understanding that we're probably underspent in personnel costs as well, or is that something that simply, given the nature of what the work needs to be done, isn't appropriate?
Can I respond to that respond to two parts of that? I know that when you look at this table, you see, oh, that's an awful lot of things that we need to do. But that's the whole point about doing an audit in the first place. It's not supposed to be a punitive thing. It's just like, look, we know these are areas of importance to us. We need to make sure that we're doing them well. Are we? No, we've got gaps. How do we address those gaps? And yep, there's a few. Not all of them are created equal in terms of risk, but it's work that we want to get done all the same. So I would like staff not to be anxious. I like them not to be complacent, but I'd like them, not to be anxious, because this just shows us the opportunity, actually. So that's the first thing I'd like to respond to there. And as you can see, we do have people are responsible and programs of work and timeframes within which we're going to work to address them. In To your second point, is there an opportunity to use people to, or external people, or to look at non-employees to support various programs of work? That's what we do anyway, I guess, if you know what I mean, in terms of, you know, I've got pieces of work within my team, like for example, the work that we're doing with PwC at the moment around the risk scan, you know, in order to be able to continue progress pieces of work and tactically use external suppliers rather than having permanent members of staff. I can certainly speak to my colleagues and see whether there's an opportunity, or we can review these in terms of thinking about the risk relative to the outstanding nature of some of these work, and see if there's an opportunity to progress some pieces of work more swiftly. The thing I would say about that is that that's fine. You still need someone who's got the bandwidth to be able to oversee that program of work and manage that external supply. So there's a balance to be had around all of that.
Just one other final one was on the risk scanning exercise. That's imminent. It's
Monday. Yeah.
And I guess my question on that was, is there any council representation in that group?
What we're doing is we're bringing that conversation back to council. So there will be 100% council representation in that group once we've had that conversation on Monday.
And the only reason I ask that is that sometimes the councillors by default are less inward looking and more outward looking, and might bring some additional insights to that. So that's great to hear that there'll be an opportunity.
Yeah, just on there, I'd just like to express that the risk scan, by virtue of what it is externally looking. So, you know, last year, I think when we brought the report through, you know, we were looking at reports produced by the World Economic Forum and various other agencies that do this. So not only looking, you know, externally at the big risks, but also over an extended time frame horizon, like a 10-year horizon, LTP horizon. There's also consideration of those risks and risks relating to not only New Zealand, but Southland and the local government sector. So all of that's coming together in one big thing. And the context in which the scan's being undertaken is to consider that, to consider all of those matters and how they may impact our ability to achieve our strategic outcomes. Yep.
It is, yeah. So the risk scanning exercise is an external looking exercise. Yeah. So thank you, Amy. No other questions? Could I have a mover, please? Phil, seconded by Alistair. In favour?
Aye.
Yes, carried. Thank you. Health and safety report. Oh, welcome to the table, Paul. Thank you for your standing paper. If you would like to provide a brief overview, please. There's plenty in it, as always, so it'd be good for you to touch on some of the key points.
Sure. So thank you, everyone. Take the report as read. So just a couple of things I just want to really highlight. One is just around one of the more sort of notable incidents that we had, which was a vehicle near miss, where one of our vehicles had to avoid head-on with a vehicle coming on the wrong side of the road on the gravel road. Luckily for both drivers, it was a fairly slow maneuver. They had just come out of a bend and both vehicles could stop, and in fact our driver could actually even talk to the driver of the other vehicle and remind them to stay on the right side of the road. Now we all know that as being, you know, fairly common, particularly in Southland, over the sort of tourist season and so on. So you know, from a procurement perspective and a safety perspective, you know, all our vehicles, we make sure that we are buying the best possible vehicles from the safety aspect, so that if for the event where we do potentially have a collision of some sort, that our staff are protected by, you know, the most protective rated vehicles, and, you know, safe in that essence. So yeah, so just a notable incident that it was just worth noting. Just further to Councillor Rodway's question earlier around the announcement made by Minister Van Velden that has announced some changes to the health and safety system. The changes are part of a wider health and safety reform as such, and she's basically set out sort of 8 initial areas which they're going to focus on to try and reduce some compliance burden and to clarify health and safety duties. So I'd just like to reiterate that these changes have been announced, but there is no detail. So a fairly high level. So it's difficult to kind of assess what it is that is going to change for us in particular. The only piece that's really sort of come into action recently is the Cone hotline. That's become active as such and has been met with some interesting comments, particularly from the sector that is in the traffic management sector themselves, and then obviously people that have offence with road cones. But from our perspective, 3 sort of key areas where I can see potentially is going to be some focus on us is around the sharpening of the primary purpose of the Act, focusing particularly on critical risk. I think that's a positive move because that is where we should be focusing our attention is on that critical risk. I think there's going to be some impact on us around the clarifying the distinction between governance and operational management, and talking about reducing responsibilities from directors and rolling that down, further down the organisation. So trying to remove some of that director fear, I think, is where they're aiming towards. And then a real positive change, I think, is the rolling up of our approved codes of practices. So, we in 2015, the legislation was written and approved, and there was all kinds of promises that there would be a suite of regulations that would follow. Those regulations have never really materialized, and I think we're lacking in detail around how we can comply to the Act. And I think there's a suite of code of practices that are now most probably out of date, but are still relevant. And I think they're looking to roll those up and giving them a bit more clout and giving them some more prevalence in our legislative structure as such, so that at least there's something we can turn to get some further guidance. So I think that's a real positive for us. But as I said, still lacking a lot of detail. Otherwise, around the driving aspects and speeding, we have seen a slight increase in our speeding over this last quarter, and just recently the executive are taking some more proactive action around that, and what we're trying to do is really up our reporting. So as opposed to monthly reporting, and now sort of focusing more on a weekly report going to our operational managers to try and intervene quicker and get on top of some of those speeding events. But there's still areas where we've been caught out really, and that's once again it's performing overtaking manoeuvres, areas where speed limits were once upon a time a certain number versus what they are now, with the reduction of speed limits and so on. So we're still sometimes getting caught out in some of those areas.
Happy to take questions. Boris.
Well, in regards to the legislation, I imagine there'll be an opportunity for councils, the local government, and also individual councils to make a submission when the legislation is put out in public comment. Is that true? And if so, would we do that?
I wouldn't put my money on that. I mean, I think I think we've seen a lot of stuff fast tracked through this current government. I'm not too sure what opportunity we will necessarily have. Now I know that there have been various commentators that have had input. The Institute of Directors, they've had some comment. The Health and Safety Business Forum has had opportunity to put some comment in. So I think there has been some opportunity. The Minister has spoken that she has gone to business and to industry and, had discussion with them. I think it's a wait and see, to be fair, whether we'll actually get opportunity. I get a sense that a lot of this is going to be fast tracked and it's going to go through pretty quickly.
Great.
Once the
And Amy?
details are-
I was going to say, sorry, we've got Marcus here. Marcus, sorry, do you have any, do you have a 50 cents worth on any anticipated opportunity to contribute into that legislation from the government, as you understand it?
Yes, certainly, through you, Chair. We're keeping an eye on all regulatory reform going through the process. Primarily been focusing on the environmental side of things, but yeah, we can dive a bit deeper into the health and safety changes to make sure that we're across them and understand the implications for the organisation. So we'll put it on our list to be a bit more focused on moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Alistair, you had a question?
Yes, I did. I have, yes, through you, Chair. With the things that are changing and things, how is the mental health of our staff?
Yeah, so that you'll see in the report, that was one of the questions my health and safety reps came back to me asking the exact same question. And they were particularly interested in, what are we seeing in our EAP reports and things like that. And generally speaking, we've obviously seen, small spikes in sort of key time areas where people have taken up our EAP service. Now, I don't have the detail on exactly what is discussed. It could be totally unrelated. It might be related to some of that organisational change. But, nothing there that jumps out to say, wow, there's been a massive uptake of EAP and there's a huge strain on the organisation from mental well-being when it comes to organisational change. I think just, putting the fingers on the pulse of the organisation, I think obviously change is always does raise some issues, and I think the health and safety reps have taken that on board and gone back to their teams and most certainly encouraged teams to use our EAP services, and small things like our general managers making their time available, with specific sessions to talk people through these changes. So I think generally speaking, there's always angst, there's always a bit of concern, but nothing that really jumps out to be, hugely alarming at this stage. I think we must probably starting to move into after the change now, and I think that's most probably becoming a bit more stressful because there's a lot of vacant roles and things like that. So I think that, we might see some additional pressure put on teams, particularly with vacancies. But as we start filling that vacancy, so that's going to ease off. So there's going to be a lead in time to getting ourselves back 100% to where we want to be. But I think we're actively doing that. So that's just time will tell, I think.
Supplementary?
Supplementary, yes, and I think Amy's was also supplementary first. And
Do you consider the mental well-being of councillors at all?
Well, I'm hoping to. I'm hoping so. Most certainly, if our councillors are feeling the pressure and all of that, absolutely. I think we do provide access to our EAP services to our councillors, and most certainly by speaking to our general managers and getting some assurance from our general managers, I think is a good pathway.
Amy, you would like to?
I was going to say, just responding to the last question first, also through LGNZ, support is available for councillors who are experiencing wellbeing issues, and you're encouraged to uptake that, and that's also an advocacy body for the politicians as well, so you have an opportunity to engage with them, but you're also welcome to engage with the democracy team if there are issues, and certainly your employee, the chief executive, and also looking at the chair and the leadership group. And if there's anything that we can be doing to support you from a democracy services team, very welcome to approach us, and we'll look and see what we can do with that. In terms of the support that was put in place around the organisational change, really leaned into that to make sure that general managers who could provide information to staff who had questions were around and available. That was quite deliberate. Also, the deliberate provision of extra EAP support. Very well aware that change can be unsettling, and if I sort of reflect on the last 5 years, we've just had this rolling change, and that's going to be our new normal. So one of the focuses for the organisation development team that we are putting in place, sit in my area, is to focus on two aspects of change. One, how do we build the change resilience of the organisation and the people within it? And two, how do we get better at doing change? Because that's not a core organisational competence either. So those two things going hand in hand will help us as individuals and as an organisation going forwards. And then to Paul's point around, carrying some vacancies at the moment, but the general managers are actively working to put in place transitional arrangements. And Councillor Morris's point, we talked about various people in the organisation maybe using interim support in order to progress activity to make sure that the impact of those vacancies aren't keenly felt. And also, as we move from having done the change into implementing the change and moving forwards, I have spoken to the people and capability team about bringing some people into the organisation that can help talk to staff around various tools that they can use to manage uncertainty. And we have done this in the past. I can't remember whether it was before COVID or after COVID, but it was around about the COVID time. Those sessions were really well received by staff. I mean, that's everything from breathing exercises to how you can think about things, and tools that people can use in their work lives and in their personal lives to manage anxiety and concerns, because you can't always control those things that are happening around you. And to Councillor Gibson's point, if the councillors felt that that would be something that would benefit them as well, then we are certainly happy to look at including them in those sessions too.
Amy. I just had possibly a final question. Paul, one of the areas that we've been tracking with this paper every quarter or so is the Avid Plus audit, which has been done every couple of years. So that sort of gives us an update in terms of our across some key areas of our health and safety and how we're progressing to date. And I just saw an update there. I just wanted to sort of hear from you, just to make sure I was interpreting it correctly in terms of where we're at with all of those actions from the Avid Plus audit.
Yes, yeah. So the Avid audit, the Avid Plus audits, the key, what I call the high findings as such, if want of a better word, they form basically the crux of the health and safety work program at the moment. So those key elements that I'm reporting on is basically, something that sits in our annual business plan, and that's what's going forward to try and address those actions and make sure that we're closing up. So, there's progress being made on each one of those actions, on a quarterly basis. One of the things that we are trying to get on top of is bringing our entire management system with that program. So keeping a management system that was written in just after the legislative change as such, so 2016, 2017, modernizing and bringing that into current thinking and so on. So that in itself is a piece of work, but dovetailing into all of that are all these other actions and things like that. So to answer your question, yep, there's work that's ongoing in that space all the time, and as I said, it does form the crux of our work program going forward. So that'll be reflected in our business plan going forward, and when it comes to budgeting and so on, assigning the right budget to it and making progress going forward.
So can I just check, so the greens which say they're on track, is
Yeah.
that our own update or was that from an external person's
No,
point of
that's
view?
our own update.
Our own update. of-
Verification will happen when our auditor is back on site again to verify those.
Okay.
Those findings, yeah.
Right, all right, that's good. If you could keep reporting on that, that'd be fantastic.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Happy to move the item.
Seconded by Elster, favour? Against, carried. Thank you very much, Paul, for all of your work. Appreciate it.
That's a pleasure. Just a technical thing, this machine has died. Does that is of any importance?
We can't see you.
Sure you want to be looking at me that closely. The problem is that I just see the back of my head on that screen.
Well, a slight reflection.
Yes, that's what worries
Maybe it
me.
was you.
The battery's gone. Somehow that's not plugged in. Something's gone wrong.
You could plug it in around here if you want. There is power here.
Yeah, we might have to- Should do. There we go. There we go. Oh, let's fire up.
All right, agenda item number 9.4. Haley and Marcus, welcome to the table. So this is our risk deep dive. We do at least one of these each committee to deep dive into one of our key strategic risks. And today it is sector reforms. Thank you very much for your paper. If you'd like to provide an introduction to it.
Kia ora koutou, through you, Chair. I think you'd have to be living under a rock not to know that we are in the midst of probably one of the most significant and transformative reforms of New Zealand's environmental legislation. Some of you may remember the last time it happened with the shift from the Town and Country Planning Act to the Resource Management Act, but alongside the reform of the RMA, of course, is proposed amendments to other legislation which tie into it, into which Environment Southland and its communities, its customers, businesses operate. So that includes the Wildlife Act, the Biosecurity Act, the Conservation Act, the Public Works Act, along with new environmental legislation such as the Fast Track Approvals Act, proposed legislation around the Offshore Renewable Energy Bill, the Water Services Bill. We've seen the Treaty Principles Bill come and go, and then the now current for consultation Regulatory Standards Bill. This represents a paradigm shift for Environment Southland and the people it serves and the environment. And so as a consequence, we have rated it because of its likelihood of it being certain and the impact of those reforms as being an extreme risk. We have, as a consequence, a number of ongoing, for some time now, in fact, preventative controls and working through our mitigating controls with respect to the risk rating and the broad and deep nature of this legislative and regulatory reform set of processes. In terms of our preventative controls, we've had a very extensive program of work led by Marcus and others with respect to working with government officials and not just in the Ministry for the Environment, across a number of other ministries as well. And also working with across the sector, in particular Te Uru Kahika, but also through Ngāi Tahu, with our stakeholders, with communities, with customers, businesses, farmers, and of course your good selves. What we've been trying to communicate is bring a twofold view. The practitioner, Environment Southland view, but also the view of our customers and communities who, dare I say it, and I probably shouldn't because I'm the GM of regulation, who suffer regulation. So that we can help ministry officials understand the ins and outs of implementing regulation, what good regulation looks like for Southland and Southlanders, so that we can then, once that lands, ensure that we can fully support our communities and customers.
Sorry.
We're just.
Am I okay now? Yeah, sorry. Can you mute me, Rebecca, please?
Us to the death, guys.
I think.
Right, so that they can understand what this paradigm shift will mean for them personally, for their businesses, for their interests and how they like to engage with the environment of Murihiku Southland, and how Environment Southland will ensure that the outcomes that we've committed to are delivered. So the risks are pretty manifold in terms of ensuring that those involved in crafting this reform understand the Southland picture, and we're a special place with a special set of unique challenges. So ensuring that those are dealt with in an appropriate way through new regulations being one of our kind of critical preventative controls that we've applied in dealing with this risk. We also know that when we move into the mitigating controls, there'll be a lot of work for Environment Southland staff and for its governance for council. And that's when the real mahi starts. Firstly, with ensuring that there isn't an understanding gap between what we've committed to as a council and what communities and our customers want to see as outcomes, and then how this new regulatory and legislative environment will deliver that. There's also an implementation piece, which will be absolutely critical, and a support piece. How do we ensure that our customers, our communities, businesses are able to continue to thrive and do what they need to do and achieve their aspirations and outcomes whilst working under this new regulatory picture? Anything you'd like to add, Marcus?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Effectively, Environment Southland exists out of statute, and all of our functions being, ability to collect rates, and the majority of our work program is all regulatory driven out of Resource Management Act. So having an awareness of what's coming and how it impacts our organisation, and whether we're doing the right things to achieve that legislative requirement and our ratepayer money is going in the right focus, is critically important and informed by this piece of work. It feels like the organisation's had some really great traction on the submissions we've put in, and even yesterday the Environmental Select Committee reported back on Resource Management Bill number 2 around Section 70 of the Resource Management Act, which is we're tinkering with at the moment, and Environment Southland has been in the High Court and all the way Court of Appeal effectively on that piece, and now back at the Environment Court just to try and understand exactly how the water and land plan needs to land. So, the evidence yesterday was that we have had some good success, and the rules are changing, or the legislation is changing the way we requested it. Not exactly, but pretty close to, and it looks like it's going to have a retrospective view of applications we're going through before the legislation comes out would still be captured by the process. So we're having a good impact and presented to a number of select committees through submissions and seem to be getting our voices heard in Wellington. So seem to be having good success in that space. But open to any questions from the committee. Right.
Thank you very much for that thorough overview. And so just open up to questions. Just like to say that it's can be quite a wide-ranging topic. Sector reforms and all the different areas that it touches on. So I guess for this paper, us being the Risk and Assurance Committee, and this one being around our risk process. So if we sort of can keep our questions around sort of the risk, the controls that we have in place, and essentially the processes that as an organisation we have in place around this area of risk. So just to sort of, because otherwise it can be quite a wide-ranging topic, I can imagine. So, questions? Bill?
Can I just clarify how are you currently rating this risk? What's your categorisation of it?
Through you, Chair, extreme. This is probably one of our most significant strategic risks. I do note that other agencies also rate this as an extreme risk and worthy therefore of very significant attention by staff and by governance.
And through you, Chair, I was just wondering if this committee had an appetite to perhaps alert the full council to the nature of this risk with a statement in our minutes, perhaps flagging that it's recognising the exceptional level of disruption risk here. The current policy environment, while dynamic, is also volatile. Our concern is not reform per se, but reform without coordination, clarity, or appropriate transition pathways. And that, in my mind, seems to threaten both the trust of our communities and the continuity or pursuit of our, organisational mission. So I was just wondering if I'm happy to support receiving the, but I was wondering if it's appropriate to make a statement of that nature to the full council so that they understand the significance of this from this reporting back from this committee to council.
Yep. So yes, we can talk on that particular point, and also any other questions as well. But I'll make sure we do come back to it if it's not addressed straight away by the end. So go Nicol first, and then.
Yes, no, thanks for the report, but it does emphasise the huge uncertainty out there at the moment on what the replacement of the RMA will look like, what are the roles going to be of regional councils. There's quite a push for national direction. And I guess it's quite frustrating for staff and councillors that things we thought we were going to be doing this year are pretty much on hold. Direction from government has stopped doing things, but farm plans, we've technically got 18 months to do a whole lot of work, and we still can't advance it. Obviously the submissions on the current NESs and MPSs, which will obviously be involved in, may give us a bit more clarity going forward. But just acknowledging the tsunami of legislation coming through that we're required to actually submit on, and well done staff, and sometimes governments is involved in these, often a video link to a select committee, but if we don't do that, we lose the regional plan that we definitely need. That, I guess that's one of the biggest risks, I think, is that if you've got a whole lot of national direction that doesn't recognise regional flavour going forward, that will not be good for Southland. So it's a risk we've got to manage, and it means working times to try and keep doing what we are doing to get a good result at the end of the day. High level, the RMA change aspirations are quite good. It's just the devil in the detail that we can hopefully help shape.
Thank you, Nicol. And
Mr. Chairman, I'm having a wee bit of trouble understanding the risk, because I see there's a risk to us being able to achieve what we've been trying to achieve over the past many years, that is improve water quality, improve the sustainability of businesses and Southland generally. Is that something that is at risk, or is the risk more to do with this organisation actually being able to function into the future?
yes, if you'd like to.
Through you, Chair, I would say both, actually. So there is, the risk to us achieving the outcomes that we have committed to through the long-term plan to our communities and our customers is at risk if we are not controlling that risk through how we influence. So that's the preventative control that we're applying. And then once that legislation, that regulation has landed, how we implement that. So if we do not implement good regulation that allows for the Southland, piece picture to be delivered, our implementation risk will then, have a consequence. The consequence being that we are at risk in achieving our outcomes as committed around the environment, around ensuring that we have a sustaining, thriving economy. So they're sort of interrelated.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. The earlier piece I'd add is also the partnership with iwi in this space too. Like, Environment Southland has a good relationship with iwi through legislation, and as legislation moves forward, if our ability to regulate and operate in these spaces is diminished, then our partnership may change too with iwi as well. So yeah, we're certainly trying to, in this space with centralisation of more decision making, more national prescription and less local determination around regulations, we need to understand what those implications are and just how what our role is effectively moving forward and how much we can play in that space, and whether it's a regulatory approach or a non-regulatory approach, there are other approaches we can take to try and incentivise the right behaviour. Our regulatory tools only exist through the legislation, and as the legislation evolves and changes, our ability to regulate in that space could change too. So being aware of what's happening, understanding the implications, articulating our concerns through that process is the best way we can be involved.
Actually, through you, Chair, I might add to that, because Marcus had picked up on the really important point that I'm supposed to also introduce, which I forgot to, so my apologies, is the use of non-regulatory methods to achieve the outcomes that we wish to see in Murihiku Southland. And so the executive have been starting a discussion, including also with staff, around impact. So how it relates to this risk around regulatory reform, we know that there is likely to become an increased emphasis on more direct action or other non-regulatory methods to achieve our outcomes and to deliver results for Southland. And so that thinking is happening now. It's really important that we get to that place. And we know that there are a range of other industry representatives, mana whenua are tackling with this question. In this paradigm shift about how regulation works to achieve environmental management, if that is detuned because we're moving into a more permissive environment, how do we still achieve those outcomes? It's likely we will see an increased emphasis on non-regulatory methods, and that's a journey that we have started going on. And I see that really as putting that into the preventative controls for now type thinking in terms of mitigating this risk, but it will soon move into a mitigating control most likely. So that's another work stream that we're working through as well.
Maurice, would you like to?
Well, I could just add, I listened to the chairman of Environment Canterbury on the radio earlier in the week talking about the proposed discharge rules that are being, Marcus will be very familiar with those, and how they were really going to put a big strain on, that's my interpretation anyway, on the environment. How one example was he thought it would be easier for people to discharge their waste out to sea because he didn't have to treat it very much. And for applying effluent to land, their current rule is it's 10 times less than what the new rule is proposing to be allowed in terms of nutrient concentrations on the land. So this is not just a problem for us, it's a problem for the whole regional sector, I would think. So getting back to Phil's question, if we are to do a recommendation to the whole council, I think that then should go further up to local government New Zealand and maybe even to central government through local government New Zealand or through the regional sector anyway, to express the views that we've heard today, that it is a great risk not just to Environment Southland but to probably every regional council in the country.
That's good. We could be coming near the end, but we'll let Alistair and then we'll be able to combine these 2 points together at the very end. So Alistair?
I think just to open that up, and if I listen to Hayley reasonably careful out of both of my ears, I hear that we may be coming out of a regulation phase and going into a cooperation phase. Now, we've talked about that around the table, that we're going out to something like that. So our whole approach has to change. We can't just put the big hammer on the head and say, you will do this. We've got to encourage them to do it. And I think at the moment that we've got enough work going on around the place where people are really keen. If regulation comes down and clobbers them, they'll stop. If they're able to get going and keep it going, that'll expand. And I can give you the example of the Edendale Catchment Group. I went there about 3 months ago and there was about 17 odd people came to the meeting. I went there about 3 weeks ago, there's 70. So that's what's happening around the place, and regulation will kill that. Just my comment, sorry.
Thank you. So I think we've got 2 points raised by Phil, And Morris?
Sorry, can I just
Amy,
respond?
would you like?
Can I just respond to that? Just a couple of things. First thing to say is, so whilst there might be a change in the focus of the legislation is not going away. There's still a regulatory requirement to do certain things. We still have a role in relation to that. But if I go back to the recent organisation redesign that we put in place, like we've been able to see this coming, and one of the key drivers of that organisational change is to make sure that we've match fit and we've got the focus and the capacity to engage more effectively with communities on the ground to encourage some of that proactive action that doesn't require regulation or uses regulation as some sort of backstop. But I just wanted to focus on that specific point.
So just rounding this out, so there's been a request to I guess raise it up to the full council just because of the nature of it and how worthy.
Well, just I'm not suggesting it needs a change to the current recommendation, but I'm just wondering if how do we make sure this
What's
is
the mechanism?
flagged?
Yep.
Because this particular chair will not be at the council meeting, and so just when it goes to that council for approval, just to flag the level of risk that we are carrying and the level of risk to our mission in terms of engaging with our community and improving the environment.
Amy?
So there's two things, and happy to canvass your views on that. And I think we did this before when we were considering the minutes of the investment committee. There's an opportunity for someone, typically the chair or the deputy chair, is also not here. We have the chair of the council here, as an opportunity to actually speak to this point in the minutes, like when the minutes are being considered, it's an opportunity to actually take some time to reflect on paper and the risks that are raised. I'd also, on behalf of Hayley and Marcus, would also like to offer you the opportunity, if you so felt fit, for Hayley and Marcus to brief the council proper in the way that they have briefed you here today, if you felt so considerably about the risk that you felt that was important for your colleagues.
Yep, I'm seeing some nods because I certainly think that's been a very worthwhile discussion, and I think hearing it sort of out loud, how it's been talked about today, would potentially be worthwhile. Is any views on?
I think just with that would be more proactive stuff that we can do is how we respond to the NESs, etc. I mean, just saying, reform has a lot of risk is probably not that helpful. It's to be aware of it, but actually it's also encouraging us as a council to be proactive in what we can do, and that's trying to land things that we could live with on the ground. So it may even come in a workshop type of thing, because and I guess the risk is the public perception there are going to be no rules, and actually that's not true. And that's one thing we have to get our head around, is that there's a whole lot more permitted activities that councils like ourselves still have to monitor who pays. So there's a lot of financial risk as well as that perception.
Thank you, Nicole. And just finally,
I would really enjoy having two people here, presenters coming, Hayley and Marcus, to the council and explain what the options are and how it might work. Because it's either going to go one way or it's either going to go the other way. Nobody knows at this point.
And I think the most important thing was in terms of just, we recognise the risk, but also the processes that are in place at the moment around this, which has been the most important thing with it. I think we've heard from both Hayley and Marcus in terms of how the organisation is working through this at the moment.
Through you, Chair, that's a great idea. One risk we didn't really cover is transition risk as well, which just popped into my mind when Councillor Gibson was talking about the Evedale catchment group, and I have written down his commentary around from regulation phase into a cooperation phase, and I think that's where the opportunity lies. But we do have transition risk as we move from a regulation heavy context through to a more permissive regime, and how we work with our customers and our communities through that transition. And that's going to require a lot of nuance from staff and possibly our wise governors as we move through that to support our communities so that they're always on the right side of the rules and they understand how things transition across, because it took a long time for the RMA to have a full set of jurisprudence built around it to provide certainty to those wanting to undertake development and activities under that legislation. And there were a lot of people in that transition period through no fault of their own, falling foul of things as we explored what concepts mean, like avoid, etc. So, I'm hoping that we get we build on existing jurisprudence and case law to provide certainty for people who just want to get stuff done in Southland.
Just looking at the time, so I think there's been sort of agreement that
Still taking action.
yeah, this can be taken to the wider council.
Yep.
Thank you very much. Have someone move? Alistair, thank you. Second, Nicole, in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Nine point five. Our insurance update. Tracy, Patrick. Yeah, thank you very much for this paper. I'm just moving to it. There were a number of areas to this paper, a number of different sort of sections to it. And there's a bit of background, I guess, to each one as well, because it's sort of it's a bit of a process that we've been involved in for a while. So just, yeah, keen for you to provide an overview, sort of, touch on each of those topics, or the ones that you would like to touch on anyway, especially with a bit of the background just for us.
Thank you, Chair. I thought I'd make some key comments around the main topic in the paper. So the main focus of the paper is to foreshadow that further work is needed and is underway around the flood resilience asset insurance. Our current asset valuation is based on book value of $117 million, and that has us paying an annual insurance premium of $218,000 per annum. Some recent work done, relatively high level but indicative, suggests that on a replacement value basis, our assets are worth something in the order of $156 million. If we were to insure them at full replacement value, we'd be looking at a premium of $872,000, so roughly times 4. However, total loss is unlikely, so we need to do some modelling work with Aon and other parties, and we need to get the balance right in terms of future premium cost and the level of residual risk that the council is prepared to bear. So we're foreshadowing that a piece of work is underway that includes working with Aon, but it also includes working with my colleague Lucy's team. They have some expert input from a river expert who has dealt with similar matters in other councils and should be able to give us some good advice about how to balance risk and increasing premium costs and getting the balance right. So once the work's done, further paper will come, and that paper is intended to recommend a way forward that balances the cost of a higher premium with getting the risk right with our assets.
Great. Thank you. So that's sort of the first item there on that paper, which is one of the main items. Should we open up from there, or is there anything else you'd like to touch on at all? Or
Tracy, do you want to touch on any other elements of the paper? Or should we...
Yeah, I think I would perhaps go over this. And
yeah, we can touch on the other ones. All right.
use the next one.
So yeah, okay. Nicole.
Yes, look, we look at now the targeted certainly is the way to go. My eyes bulged and I looked at a fourfold increase in the insurance premiums for the chances of losing huge amounts of their flood network in one is pretty unlikely. So I think the targeted is the way to go, and I guess we'll get more information going forward on what that actually looks like. So yeah, I'd agree with the recommendation for the target.
Thank you, Nicole. Ross?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Just note that at the bottom of page 42, you say that stop banks cost $450 per kilometre to repair, which I think is probably missing 2 zeros there.
Yeah.
I think it should be 450,000 per kilometre. Although you've got 850 per kilometre of well for a shorter length, but clearly it's a lot more than that.
Yeah.
That is, but talking about stop banks, Mr. Chairman, and the risk in the insurance, obviously if you want to replace the stop banks, then that is a big cost. It's highlighted in here. But as we are moving into the future, we're talking about the slow to flow work that we're doing, which might involve not having so many stop banks in the future. This is clearly an issue for, you know, going in a decade, 20, 30 years in the future. But many places in the world now are looking at ways to manage flooding in a different way to what we've done in the past. So we are working on this a bit as well. So protecting stop banks into the future will be something that I think that we will have to examine very closely, and obviously that will be an issue for insurance, but also an issue for protecting the community. So I don't disagree that with the process here for this year and next year, but into the future, we need to be looking at this a little bit more holistically, looking at other ways that we can protect the community without maintaining all these stop banks.
Sorry, I'm definitely a very valid view. And I'm not sure if you want to touch on the fact that, you know, this is just looking at now and in the future you would.
I can comment on that if you would like. I think the insurance renewal is annual, is that correct, Tracy? So as we adapt our assets into the future to best manage flood risk, then I think to your point, Morris, we need to ensure that what we're recording as replacement value for the assets reflects any work that's done on an annual basis.
Yeah, thank you. It's a matter for other parts of this organisation, but
very valid phrase. Alistair?
I don't quite understand, but if you have the targeted rate and you suggested that we'll put a total value of 456 million, whatever it is, on it, can we fix them up anywhere on that targeted thing? Or do we have to insure all our flood banks for replacement to allow to do that?
Yeah, so the asset, I'll just look at that. So the asset schedule, you have particular stop bank, so many kilometres, and what you insure it for.
So that's specific to that from there on in?
Yes.
Okay, so, yeah, right.
Yes, so we have, as you say, the whole asset value, but your asset, what's actually insured is specified on that asset schedule line by line.
So we've got about 510 kilometres, is it something of flood
Something
banks?
like that, yes.
333.
333. Well, we insure the whole lot being one. So that's one thing insured. In other words, that 333 kilometres is insured total for replacement.
No, that's the purpose of the exercise.
Yeah, that's your targeted one.
So correct me if I'm wrong, Tracy, but if we were to insure everything that we've got at replacement cost, then the estimated value of everything we've got is 456 million.
Yep.
And the premium we would have to pay would go up by a factor of 4, 872k. So what the paper proposes is we're more targeted than that because the risk of total loss is very low.
You're fair enough.
Thank you. And Nicole?
Look, just on that, at the moment we insure for 60% loss and we cover 40%, I think is the case. The other thing is most of the catchments have disaster reserves. We've never actually tapped into any of those in the past, and I think we need to look at that whole package of actual risk. So normally, if we have a flood and there's an issue, they'll go to the current account for a start. Normally, between that and insurance, it's covering it. So I think we need to look at everything we're doing there. We're still building up reserves on all those catchments, and some of them are getting to the stage where they could be inflation. I think it's at least one is sort of capped in just inflation and change. But are we actually doing too much? We just need to have that. What is our risk? What's our response? And we've known from the past from floods, you're not going to take out your whole flood banks, and we breaches here and there, and it's just how much do we self-insure for our own reserves, and how much do we actually pay on an ongoing basis? And for 800 odd grand, I thought that is overkill. So, but I think we need a good report to come back. So we'll look at the thing. This is where we need to land.
Right. I think there's a couple of other sort of sections to the paper, so I think we are in agreement around the recommendation. So when we do note the paper, I think we'll be noting the targeted approach. It's looking fine. A couple other sections of the paper. Should I just, is it right if I just dive in with a question?
Definitely, thank you.
So council's group insurance cover, just the next section and the next page. So the South Island Collective, the memorandum of understanding. So was good to read the update there around that collective of councils progressing. I was just keen to hear the background to that again, because here it just it talked about it progressing it even further. But if you could just touch on even just back to basics in terms of the why and what this means for this organisation.
Yeah, that's so it's a memorandum, it's a draft memorandum of understanding at this stage.
Yep. So
it defines the split between those 8 councils. And you'll note on the next page, we talk about loss modelling, it lists all those councils and the total declared value. So we've got a limit, a loss limit with that group insurance. And yeah, you'd see obviously some of them be one of the smallest councils there, smallest asset value stage. So this memorandum of understanding is being with the lawyers to just finalise and make it a legal document. Things like the loss modelling, it's a standard, it's going to be included in that memorandum of understanding. So we're all on the same page and it's a legally binding document.
So an existing collective that is continuing is the and then this is just sort of an update of the loss modelling within that.
Yeah.
Amy?
If I can provide a little history, and you both can correct me if I'm wrong. So the point about having the memorandum of understanding, if I understand it correctly, is that we've got this joint policy which we share, but there's individual limits. If we all go at the same time and we're all making a call on the funds, the memorandum of understanding helps us agree in peacetime how that's all going to work. If we potentially need to, some people need more than others, or divvy the excess, all those sorts of things. It's been discussed for a while, and part of it going or taking a bit of time to resolve is the fact that it hasn't. I remember the previous versions of the memorandum of understanding didn't have legal status, and actually we need something that's going to endure should we need to use it in the future. So it just provides the opportunity for us to, I guess, know where we stand and be explicit about what would happen in the event that we collectively needed to call on insurance. Have I understood that correctly? Yeah.
And just a further comment on that. So if we are collectively purchasing our insurance, then I think having some legal status in terms of if there was a multi-claim event, where we stand, I think it's an important feature.
That's good. That makes sense now. Thank you very much. And Nicole?
Yes, I'll try to get my head around it. Are we more or less talking more like an AFBA type event, which could affect multiple districts? Because it's quite different from the figures on the other page for our flood modelling. So is this for everything, or is it more for something catastrophic that affects whole of the regions? And the other comment I was going to make was on leasehold insurance. I'm a little bit surprised that they've actually insured structures in the past. I would have thought personal contents is where it should have been, and it looks like that's a recommendation.
Was that? Yep. So was that a question? Sorry, I missed. Or was it?
I think there were two questions there. I'll have to go to answering. You might you can correct me if I misstate anything. So I think in terms of the first question, the comments here that we collectively insure with other councils, and we're looking to formalise beyond. We've currently got a memorandum of understanding, and we want to give it a more contractual nature in terms of how that group insurance works. I think the key requirement here is that if there was a multi-claim event because a number of councils got impacted by a major event, we need to have a good legal understanding about where we stand and what our likely claim, how our likely claims would be paid out. So I think that's the key. That's the important point in terms of moving from a slightly less formal MOU to a contractual basis for that, for understanding that. So I think that was the key point in terms of the group insurance cover part of the paper. In terms of the lessees maintaining their own insurance, Tracy and I had a conversation about this morning. So my understanding is that we currently have 3 lessees who maintain insurance for their own, who have taken the insurance obligation for the structures on the property that's leased to them. And Tracy and others in the team are working through a process to get the insurance, so to the point where we have the insurance policy. We reflect that in the premium, and we do that for the reasons that Tracy's put in the paper, that it's risky for us to have structures on our property insured by the lessees.
Alistair,
We have them insured, sorry.
Yep, go. Yep.
We have them insured in our name, but the lessee pays the premium to you.
I don't think so.
That's how it usually works in the lease.
So we have two sets. The one is we pay the insurance,
Yes.
or whatever it is, the balance of lessees, but it's just the 3, they pay the insurance. They have FMG, we go with Aon.
Yeah, but really, I can't insure your car because you're, well, maybe risky. I can't insure somebody else's property, and that's the principle that we are at. And then in the lease, normally, the lessee then pays the premium back to the owner, the lessor. Lease, oh, yes. Yep.
So
But however,
we are stated as on the cover, the certificate cover is the interested party. So that would cover that.
okay, you work it out.
Well,
I'm only telling you what
we
normally-
will leave those 3 properties in your capable hands.
Yeah.
And I'm sure once you look through the details. And,
So I guess the principle being that we want to ensure that we are holding the insurance on the properties and structures on the properties.
And in their lease document, it says that they're not to put your assets at risk. If they do.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's in the contract itself.
I don't think you've got a proper lease agreement. But
we'll leave it with the team. Thanks for following up. Any other questions on this paper? We've got 4 different areas of work which are underway. So and we've been getting updates on this regularly. So looking forward to the next update coming through. I move this. Morris, thank you. Seconded by Phil. In favour?
Aye.
It's carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
Gary,
Good morning.
welcome. 9.6, our policy update. I think every second committee we might get this one.
The last update was November of last year.
Fantastic. All right. I'll let you provide us a brief overview. I know we've got a detailed table here. I will remind our committee that we're not going to go through each in detail. So it's often around just the process for managing this rather than the details of each or any one of these policies.
Thank you. Yeah. So currently we have 63 policies which I identify as needing a regular review. Currently we have 28 of those currently needing to have a review done on them. We've not made as much progress as we would have liked during the last sort of 6-7 months, really down to the restructure and some of the movements within the organisation. However, we have not been idle. We have put in place now, as of the 1st of this month, an automated system within our objective document management system, which will automatically send reminders to policy owners 3 months in advance of them becoming due for renewal. So that went live a couple of weeks ago, and we're already starting to see people getting those reminders and having tasks set for them with an objective, which will remind them that they have something to do. One of the things I came across when I was doing the review was that we had people whose names were on the documents that were no longer with us. So it was an opportunity for me to go through and refresh the responsible person so that we could move forward and make sure that the right people were being held responsible for updating these policies.
Thank you. And questions? Morris?
Not really question, Mr. Chairman. It's very good to see that process in place, which is quite a few that are overdue. So I'm very happy with this report. Happy to recommend it. So move that we recommend.
Or have let's ask if there's any other questions first.
No questions. I'm happy to second.
All right, happy to, we've got a mover and a seconder, so I'm fine with that as well. So in favour?
Aye.
Yes, Gary, thank you very much. It's good to see the solid process in place, and do keep us updated. Thank you. And 9.7 is our Risk and Assurance Committee annual activity report. So just updating us on really our own schedule. Amy.
Yes, so this is just a standard report that we bring to the committee. I will take it as read. The updates are noted on the table that's on page 51. Happy to take any questions. We've covered some of the items that I have pulled out for note in the previous papers.
Standard report, Mr. Chairman. I'm happy to move that as well.
Moved by Morris, seconded by Alistair.
No, we've got to do it together.
In favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you very much, Amy. All right, we will now move to public excluded.
And Rebecca, the reasons that we're moving into public excluded.
In accordance with section 48(1) of Local Government Official Information and Meetings Act of 1987, and in particular interest protected by section 7 of that act, that the public be excluded from the following parts of the proceedings of this meeting, namely confirmation of public excluded minutes, risk insurance, the general subject matters to be considered while the public is being excluded, and the reasons for this resolution in the relation to the matter and the specific grounds for excluding the public and as specified in section 48(1) of the Local Government Official Information and Meeting Acts of 1987 as set out below. They all fall under section 7 to J and section 7 to H.
Specifically to prevent the disclosure of official information for propagated advantage and to enable any local authority holding the information to carry out without prejudice or disadvantage commercial activity.
Move, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Morris. Seconded by Phil, in favour? Against, carried?
Are we offline?
Not
Not
yet.
yet.
No, we'll just,
Don't look at me, I can't do it.
You are now offline.
Thank you, Rebecca.